Hey guys, and welcome to the first episode of Season 4 from One Candle Society with your hosts, Marcus D.
and Vic Whately.
And guys, we heard our fans. We got the number of likes we needed in our Glimpse in the Dark. And we are very happy to bring you guys a very unique entity. As today, we're going to talk about the Wretch.
The Wretch's description is that of an extremely sick human. Its appearance is slightly transparent, has a jaundicey yellow skin, extremely dark circles around the eyes, and pulled back lips revealing much of its teeth. The MO of the Wretch is to circle in and hound a specific individual. It follows them around, appearing only by night, sometimes appearing in outside locations, other times inside, but always watching at a distance with an intense glare. The Wretch has been documented hounding a single individual for months at a time, and then disappearing from their lives at a moment's notice. Its exact reasons for this is as of yet unknown, although its appearance does seem to follow a certain seasonal quality, but we can get more into that in a full episode. This entity seems to function similar to a phantom, being able to appear in odd places and go out through exits that don't exist. It can appear in a fully locked house and just be gone as soon as you go to look for it. Although the Wretch has not been documented phasing through any specific objects, it seems like it would likely have to be able to, because people have followed it into rooms that have no way out, yet it's not there. Although the Wretch has not been documented harming anyone directly, its menacing effects can be noteworthy. It'll often wait till someone's in a relaxed state before revealing itself, or making itself known in a situation that's going to be particularly menacing towards its victim, and will do so over long periods of time, slowly breaking down their target. For what reasons it does this are as of yet unknown, but bear further looking into.
So okay guys, the first thing that I feel we have to talk about is how unique this entity seems to be. I mean, we had the glimpse video for the Wretch up in June, and from June until now here in late September, we had such a hard time finding any stories that fit the description of the Wretch.
That's right, the Wretch is a bit of a mold breaker. It follows certain tendencies of certain sort of entities, but then breaks it in other areas. Nothing quite truly fits its description.
I was constantly searching tons of videos and articles and stuff about other types of entities that had this yellow skin, particularly ghosts, which was my first thought when you hear about the Wretch. I couldn't find a single story about any sort of ghost having any sort of yellow skin. And the weirdest thing, the Wretch having this yellow skin just seemed to set it apart from everything. Often in the paranormal, we discuss the symbolism by a lot of the things in their appearance and things like that. And when I was looking for the Wretch, and the things that I could kind of link it to with ghosts or orbs, there was like literally almost nothing I could find for people trying to give any sort of symbolism to what its yellow skin or yellow twinge may be. And I find that incredibly odd, because we often work in a field where that's a big part of it, is trying to see what does that mean to you, or what does that mean to the entity.
But of course, if you have any ideas on that, leave it in the comments below. Yeah, I focused a lot more on its behavior, how it acted and how it zoomed in on people, and I was trying to attach it to any sort of already existing entity. In many ways, it is like a ghost, but its ability to freely move between large areas, not really attached to anything. Well, with a ghost, usually it's attached to an object or a place, something along those lines. But this thing just seemed to have free range of movement, which is just very unghost-like.
And we've been discussing its yellow skin, but the Wretch has a lot of other physical characteristics about it, which kind of brings up a few questions for us.
Yeah, a rotting specter, oddly enough, is not that uncommon in the paranormal world, but it's just not uncommon in the modern paranormal world. When we're talking about specters that were reported 100, 200, 300 years ago, they were more often reported as being like physically deteriorated, with the lips pulled back, the eyes shrunken or abnormally wide, with large parts of their body missing, showing injuries, things like that. Nowadays, we most often hear reports of ghosts just kind of appearing as whole beings.
But I think a lot of that further back had a lot to do with, I think, with how people died, because how people die often affects what they look like, maybe as ghosts in a lot of mythos. Like if people are dying from diseases back in the day that's caused them to decay, that's going to cause them to look decaying after they've died. I think in the modern mythos, we may be seeing a rise in that if you look a lot of drugs and effects that they have on people now, because a lot of drugs have a very decaying effect on people, most particularly meth. I'm going to talk about that a little bit more when I get to some of my thoughts on this.
Another possibility is that it has something to do with the modern embalming process, where previously most often people would be put into a casket, allowed to rot, allowed to return to the earth. Nowadays, there's a lot of things involved in the process that preserve the body, and some people believe that the change in how ghosts are viewed nowadays may have something to do with that. Also, if it's more on a psychological angle, when we're burying people, we very rarely actually see us burying a mutilated body. We usually see ourselves burying a pristine version of that person.
But something we haven't fully touched on yet about its physical appearance. I know we've talked a lot about ghosts and how ghosts tend to be sometimes be transparent. The Wretch isn't fully transparent.
Yeah, that's right. And a lot of the reports that we got from this is that it's mainly opaque near the head, kind of fading away as it goes down towards the legs, becoming more transparent the further down you go. And no one could really give us details on if it had clothes or things like that. Often it was viewed from either too far away, or the details just looked fuzzy, or they didn't have enough time to get a good enough look on it.
But something you see in other ghost stories sometimes is that sometimes they're fully manifested. I mean, let's look at the Headless Horseman story, that we talked about back in season 3. That was an entity that had died, came back, fully corporeal entity. So maybe the Wretch, if it is a ghost, is just a very powerful ghost.
And that's true. We do see things coming back in corporeal form, like revenants, zombies, things along those lines. But this seems to run a weird middle ground. Usually the entity is either fully corporeal or fully incorporeal. This partial mismatch, it strikes me very strange. As we go into examining its menacing nature, something that many of you guys who are veterans of the channel already know, that both me and Marcus have a history within the field of social work. And this is sending up a lot of red flags. This is making us think that it's something along the lines of a stalker or a predator.
Yeah, we've talked about it before, that predatory beings just have an innate ability to pick up on mannerisms of victims that might easily be able to be stalked and be able to be menaced. I brought it up in the very first video we ever did. There was a study that I read where they brought in men who were horrible victimizers of domestic violence. They put them behind a window. There's a room of women playing with their children, and almost in alarming high success rates, they can pick out women in the room that have been victims of domestic violence or some sort of trauma. So I think that speaks a lot to the nature of the Wretch when you look at the two stories that we have about it, that it's targeting, women when they're by themselves and can easily be stalked and menaced.
Yeah, I think this pretty much hits on the nature of the beast exactly. This is something that wants to find someone and then wants to inflict certain emotions on them, wants to exact fear, wants to exact that sort of power over others. Often, in its behavior, from what we found from the 2 cases we've studied, it'll often wait till you're relaxed, when you've almost forgot about that it exists, just to butt right back in, just to show it has the power to enter your life at its choice and exact those emotions upon you.
And when we're talking about power, the Wretch, as far as we can tell, seems to be a very powerful entity. And it stalked a member of One Candle Society. So there were other members of One Candle Society that attempted to prevent it from continuing to stalk the member that was being stalked. And it was a very, very difficult process for them to do so. I don't want to get fully into the details because it was a very personal nature about how they go about it, but we're just telling you guys and our listeners that they claimed it was very, very difficult for the methods that they used.
And these aren't people who are attempting this sort of thing for the first time. These are all experienced professional individuals. And they were all exhausted by the end of that very long night. And I mean, it took almost the entire night to do so.
I mean, they were talking about having a very suffocating presence from this thing.
Yeah, everyone said they felt the sort of sense of just this huge looming energy over them the whole time when they were trying to remove it. But I think that's about as far into the details as we want to go.
And guys, with our very limited number of stories involving this thing, this is about as far as we can really get in the dialogue before we just give our own thoughts on what we think. I mean, what do you think it is, Vic?
I've got two working theories. The first one, I don't like as much as my second one, but it's possibly a curse, that we're looking at the physical manifestation of a curse inflicted on another individual. Something that's going to loom over them, hinder their daily lives, and just kind of make them miserable. The other, which I think is more likely, is that this might be a psychic manifestation. That this could be someone, and I'm going to go back to, I know I've referenced this previously. There was a story on Mysterious Universe that I really enjoyed where they're talking about a man who was astral projecting following a woman, and then when he ran into her in real life, she recognized him. She was terrified of him. He didn't realize that she had been seeing a manifested form of him. He just thought he was invisible to the lady. I'm almost wondering if this is some low-life stalker astral projecting to follow these young ladies, and both are pretty young ladies, and just getting his kicks out of menacing her. I hate to think that there's some jackass out there doing this sort of stuff, but I'm not going to exclude it as a possibility.
For me, my gut is telling me that this is some kind of a powerful ghost. Okay? A lot of times with ghosts, their physical form is related somehow to the way that they died. And let's look at where this thing was seen. Evansville, Indiana. We are the epicenter of methamphetamine abuse, and with the rise of synthetic drugs, when you look at the effects of what these have on people, it decays their body. Let's look at the Wretch. It's pale yellowish skin, pulled back lips, sunken eyes. Sound familiar to anybody you may have seen on the street, guys? So I'm just saying, with the rise of these more powerful drugs and the large number of overdoses that happen, I don't think it would be very difficult to believe this is some sort of ghost of someone who died from a really tragic meth overdose.
And I know this isn't my theory, but just something to throw out there. A lot of times when we're talking about ghosts, a lot of people talk about energy as well. And drugs like meth, they tend to bring your energy to an apex.
Looking at its behaviors, it's stalking people. There are tons of ghost stories involving ghost stalking people. Look at its color. It's yellow, a warm color. All the encounters with the Wretch have all been negative. And when you look at any of the encounters, the warmer the color, yellow, orange, red, the more negative experience they tend to be. So that's my thoughts on it. But we'll leave this to your guys' thoughts in the comments below.
Hey guys, thank you so much for listening to our first Case File Season 4. We had a blast making it. It was great going into detail on this case. It's very personal to us here at One Candle.
It was so awesome to be able to bring you guys a unique entity that we had never heard before. And that's what we're always trying to do here at One Candle Society, is bring you guys the best paranormal content we can.
And this is still an open case for us. If you have any information about this, or you can link us to any stories that share similar themes, please send it to us. We're hungry for that information.
Yeah, we may be totally off the mark. We're very okay with that. This was just so new that Vic and I just had to take the best shot at we could at trying to explain what this thing may be. And guys, for 3 seasons long, we have heard it from you guys that you guys want us to do more paranormal content. And we would love to do that for you guys. And we now have a way that you guys can help us be able to do that for you.
Both me and Marcus, we work full-time jobs, and as much as we love doing this, there's only so many hours in the day.
And that's why we've decided to start a Patreon as a way for you guys to help us to bring you more paranormal content. So if you guys go and become a patron today, everything that goes into that, will come right back to you guys as more paranormal content for you guys.
So if you want more adventures in the strange and unusual with Marcus and Vic, well, that's how you get it.
But the most important thing, guys, as always, keep believing.
'Cause we'll keep listening.